And good evening, YouTube. Welcome to a very special edition of the Untitled Show, where we are going to talk about the latest and greatest release, Ghostbusters 2016, the remake of the 1984 classic. This movie, well, for those of you that are wondering, what is it ultimately like? And before we get into our personal subjective opinions about it, if you take the original movie and you radically improve the special effects, but you also shoot a intelligence inhibiting drug into the writing staff and pretty much just try to make everything as PC as possible, and then change everything from jokes that are based on language to jokes that are based on slapstick, then you kind of get what this film is. So, we're going to start with our quickie little, like we always do, our quickie little review of what we think of the movie as a whole and give it a score out of 10. Tim.
Yes.
Tim. What do you think of Ghostbusters?
Brief review. Hollow, unnecessary, flat, unfunny reboot. 2 out of 10.
2 out of 10. I was expecting a little better than that from you, but that's okay. So, Andrew.
Yes, Michael.
Andrew, tell me it was better than a 2 out of 10.
Oh, I've got to say, it's actually nice to be talking about a movie I actually liked for a change. I mean, so many times I come on this show and having seen horrible trailers, and then I go actually see the movie, and I know Zac Efron's been in a few things that have been terrible lately, but it was actually quite good in this one. I mean, especially after, say, We Are Your Friends and Dirty Grandpa earlier this year. Those are both horrible movies. Aubrey Plaza, also horrible in Dirty Grandpa, quite funny here. Anna Kendrick, oh, what a darling. I kind of liked her. Now, did the film have problems? Yes, I'm not really a big fan of Adam Devine, but yeah, whatever. He was all right here. I'd give this film about a 6 out of 10.
Andrew.
Yes, Michael.
You realize we're talking about Ghostbusters, right?
Ah, fuck nuggets! I was playing with these to rid my mind of that stupid fucking movie. Okay, it's still not quite as bad as every trailer I saw coming into it, but yeah, that film was a mess. I give it about, I'm not sure, somewhere about a 3.5 out of 10.
Oh, so boy, the bar is low here. Tim gives it a 2. Andrew gives it a 3. Well, I got to tell you, my quick impression of it, I will agree with you that it's not as bad as the first trailer kind of makes you think it's going to be. I will agree with you there. However, it is seriously, I'm struggling here. I'm really struggling as to whether or not this or Gods of Egypt is the worst film of the year for me so far. I'm giving this a 1 out of 10. I loathe this film on just about every possible level. But we're going to break it down for you, folks.
Break it down.
However, suffice to say that all three of us seem to have not thoroughly enjoyed this film. Unfortunately, our sometimes co-host on these shows, Brandon, who probably thinks that this is the greatest film of all time, is actually, I believe, watching the film right now, probably in a state of bliss and massive erections and orgasms. Well, let's start at the beginning here. So the introduction to this movie is really got me off on the wrong foot here, and I'll tell you why. Is that the before the credits you have almost it's while it's not a shot by shot or even the exact same scene, but it is a beat by beat remake of the opening of the original Ghostbusters. Complete with the final shot before the Ghostbusters logo to be the person screaming at a bunch of lights shining in their face, obviously being the ghost to be revealed later. Which, okay. The first thing that just kind of got me, and you guys are both liberals, so you may think this is awesome, but I just thought, oh God, it's bad enough we got all this feminist crap that people have been fighting about with this film, which I'm sure we'll get into in a little bit. But, you know, when he starts out saying, you know, it's rumored that this is the very room where P.T. Barnum decided to enslave elephants. I was like, oh my God, is everything they say going to be some stupid political thing? Fortunately, it wasn't, but that really had me nervous. What did you guys think of the introduction, the pre-credits sequence?
Well, okay. The pre-title sequence was decent. It was okay. Because there was a couple of those lines that Zach Woods, who was the tour guide, dropped off. I did like the little bit where they showed that he had rigged the candlestick to fall over. So just to show like he's kind of like, you know, I'm in on the haunting, and then the real thing happens. It's one of the only effective scenes in the film. And it's like 5 minutes or less. And it doesn't have any of our stars.
Yeah.
So
what about you, Andrew? What did you think of that pre-credit?
The opening scene was actually one of the few I liked. Now, I did kind of hear the line about P.T. Barnum enslaving elephants, but he seemed to be going overboard with everything he was saying in that little segment, right. So I didn't really mind it all that much at all. And it did seem to fit with the tone of the original, where it was like, okay, he's goofing around with this crowd of tourists, and then he has that little candlestick little trick he plays on them. And then we actually get into the spooky stuff where, my problem with that was I thought the green goo coming out of the floor was a little overdone. But other than that, I was mostly fine with it. Yeah, where I started to turn was pretty much when the title came up. But we'll get into that a little later.
I did not like the P.T. Barnum line, obviously, but other than that, I would agree with Tim. I think this was the most effective sequence in the film. It was a complete sequence that from beginning to middle to end of the entire pre-credits thing, we got actually a decent little visual telling of what's going on here. This house has been rumored to have been haunted for a long time. They take advantage of it by charging people money and spook them a little bit with the rigged stuff, and then oops, there happens to be something really going on here, and you know, we gonna need some Ghostbusters. And so at that point I was even though I didn't like that line, it really kind of rubbed me the wrong way. At that point in the film I was on board. Where I lost it was almost immediately after the credits. We were then introduced to Kristen Wiig's character. I can't even remember. I'm just going to call her Kristen Wiig because they're unlike, Aegon and Venkman and stuff from the original. Their characters are, in my opinion, are completely uninteresting and bland for the most part. We meet Kristen Wiig, who is going for tenure at Columbia University, and of course the first thing that we see is that she's trying to get her tenure approved from a man, and she has to say things about the way she's dressed, and I'm like, oh my God, this really is just going to be a girl fest, isn't it? Fortunately, it wasn't all that, but there was too much of that, in my opinion, in this film.
Well, let's not leave out the fact that every male character in this film is either a complete imbecile or a total asshole.
Well, yeah.
Every single one without fail.
And starting with her boss, you know.
Yeah, which, by the way, I thought Charles Dance was going to end up being the villain. But it turned out the villain was this totally nondescript little turd who, frankly, of the three... Who
also happened to be a man.
But of the three, this is the, if you want to consider this the third Ghostbusters movie, it's the weakest villain of the three.
Oh, by far.
He sucks. His motivation is, people picked on me, so I'm going to resurrect the dead so I can destroy the world and be their leader. I mean, it's like,
I think Sigourney's Weaver's eggs in her fridge had better motivation than this villain.
I'll tell you exactly where this lost me, though. Was when
I know where this is going.
She's angry because her ex-best friend, Melissa McCarthy, published their book that without her permission. So she goes to visit her because she's mad, and McCarthy's there with Kate McKinnon, who I have a statement to make about later. And now bear in mind, when you see these trailers and it's a PG film, it's advertised like it's a fun family supernatural comedy.
Like the
PG-13, but
PG-13. And one of the first gags we get is a queef joke.
Yes.
I was dumbfounded. I mean, first of all, the fart joke was...
Change it if I tell you it came from the front?
Yeah. And...
Well, and that's where I was getting pissed at that point, because I was like, oh my God, everything is just going to be from it's going to be everything from a feminine point of view or something, like everything has to do with being female in this.
Well, honestly, that didn't bother me, but it was just, right out of the gate, they did something the original Ghostbusters didn't do, which was a fart gag. It came off just so childish and lazy, and then to throw in the queef part of it, I was just like, you gotta be shitting me.
Now, in fairness to the original, though, the original did have a ghostly blowjob gag.
Right. Which,
granted, it was a dream sequence, but,
the way that they edited it, they edited out the context of what was going on there. But anyway, let me just say, Kate McKinnon, I'm a huge fan of her work on Saturday Night Live. I think that she's probably the most talented person on there right now. And she is hilarious and talented. However, in this film, she is the worst character in the entire film. She doesn't create a character at all. If I asked you, what is Kate McKinnon's character, you'd say, she's like, makes gadgets.
Turned on by her machines.
Or whatever. Yeah. But she creates no character. There is no beginning, middle, or end of any type of story arc for her character at all. And all she does is mug shamelessly, making faces throughout the entire film and saying weird non sequiturs that aren't funny, that fall flat. And I actually started watching her in the background of scenes where there were group scenes, and she'd be in the background and she's like making these faces. You're like, what the hell is going on? Is she having a stroke? Is she so desperate for attention that she feels she has to constantly over the top? And in comparison to the other, the other two before Leslie Jones shows up, who are so nondescript, they're almost non-entities. It's like they're asleep.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me say this because real quick on the Kate McKinnon thing, her and Chris Hemsworth were just over the top gags with faces but
without material.
Right. They weren't characters at all. They were just, sight gags. Everything she did was some kind of joke for the audience. It wasn't about building up her character. It wasn't about her having a story. It was just like, oh, look, she's licking her gun now. And obviously Chris Hemsworth was, oh, look how stupid he is, which will.
Oh, and his character, Hemsworth, he doesn't just play an idiot. He plays like someone whose intelligence is sub Peter Griffin or Homer Simpson. He's almost.
We can't use a phone.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like first of all, there's a fish tank with a phone in it.
Fish tank.
The phone is in the fish tank. Why? We're never told why. There's just a phone in the fish tank. The phone on the desk in front of him rings, and he sits there and he keeps banging his hand on the glass trying to get to the phone that's underwater instead of the one that's lit up, ringing right next to him. That's how stupid he is. And for those of you out there who think that we're complaining about minor shit, let me explain to you his big gag. He says, when I move in, because they hire him, am I going to be able to bring my cat? And I think Melissa McCarthy's like, well, I'm allergic to cats. I'm allergic to cats. He says, well, it's not a cat, it's a dog. What do you mean? Well, his name's Michael Hatt.
Mike Hatt.
And that was about the most down-to-earth gag that he had.
That's a joke in this film. Michael Hatt? Are you shitting me?
That's right up there with the, oh, we're looking for Ed so-and-so. Well, he died 15 years ago. But that means that guy who came to see us was a ghost. Hey, wait, who's this guy? Oh, that's Ed Jr. Well, why the fuck did you think they were talking about frickin' the dead guy?
Oh my God.
They introduced a ghost yet.
This is the kind of joke. These are the kind of jokes that your mom is like, God, I love those commercials on TV. I know I'm stealing that from somebody, but it's exactly what it is. It's writing that is just, it's below lowest common denominator. It's embarrassingly badly written.
Yeah.
Really, really poor.
If I could chime in on the characters, I wanted to kill Chris Hemsworth the moment he stepped on screen, and not in the good way. But Kate McKinnon, I actually didn't mind. Now, I've had this conversation with Tim before, but Michael, I didn't mind Kate McKinnon, and here's why. Everybody else all the other three were just so bland. I was glad to see someone actually doing something, even if it was just mugging.
That's where I'll disagree with you a little bit here. Is that now I didn't like Kate McKinnon's character because I thought just like Chris Hemsworth, my problem with those two characters was the same. They weren't characters; they were just walking jokes. Everything they did was a joke. Everything they said was a setup or a punchline, and most of the jokes fell flat for me.
Well, you know what? At the end, after they've won and they're on the rooftop. And they're looking out over, it's like, we did it. We're a family. And they're putting their arms around each other. And you're like, and you look at Kate McKinnon, and it's like, again, I love Kate McKinnon. I love her on SNL. But it's like, there's nothing in her character that's earned that scene.
No.
There's been no chemistry.
There's nothing.
I know you like the joke.
Anything these people do that's earned.
Right. But I mean, there's no chemistry. You never feel like they've bonded or anything. Because she's always doing these fucking faces all the time.
That's what I was going to say. So we get the three first original Ghostbusters with, Mr. Hunky Dork, Chris Hemsworth. At this point in the movie, I'm like, when are they going to bring in a character? When are they going to actually introduce a real character? Because we have two milquetoast generic scientists and two walking slapstick gags. And I'm waiting for something to actually develop. Now, that's where I'll say, to me, the one shining light in this film, as far as anything, as far as the way that, the writing, it wasn't great, but it was passable. As far as the character itself, there was actually a character, and that's Leslie Jones. She actually had a character. She was actually more interesting than anybody else in this film to me. Not because I thought she was hilarious. She wasn't. She wasn't particularly funny in this film. But she felt like a real person, a person that, and she wasn't just, because like the commercials say, "Oh, I'm street smart, so I'll help you out." And I was expecting her to practically be a walking black stereotype.
Well, she does get the usual "oh hell no" line, which every single black stereotype has. However,
she really is the one person that knows the city, and she works for the city. She understands not just hey, I heard that Guido says that this is where they sell drugs. No, she actually knows the history of the building. She understands the architecture. She knows New York City, and that knowledge is desperately needed by the rest. She's also the only one with access to a car, which the other ones desperately need. She actually is the problem solver of the group.
I will tell you that Leslie Jones also, for me, after the opening sequence, she is the focal point of the only sequence for me that really works. And that is when they go to the concert, because there's a ghost at the concert, and she encounters the mannequins, the room full of mannequins.
Yeah, that was actually creepy.
That was funny.
And that was creepy. And the movie should have stuck with that tone. Because
that was in fact, there are some critics out there, and I'm not going to name names because I don't want to talk about how dumb I think they are for liking this movie, but there are some critics out there that are saying, "Oh, there were some great scares in the movie." They're talking about the jump scares, which were horribly done. The only part of this movie that genuinely set up any kind of mood were those mannequins.
Yeah, it was creepy, and then they start trying to bust through the door at them. It was like, okay, that's the one time I really felt that they were in bodily harm, in danger.
Yeah.
And even that, let's be honest, that's not an original thing either. The mannequins thing has been done over and over again. It was done on the first episode of the reboot of Doctor Who with the Autons. Mm-hmm. It was, done on the Night Stalker with Darren McGavin, on Twilight Zone. That's an old shtick, but at least it looked, it was effective.
Yes.
But then they totally ruin it because, remember, these are ghosts. Well, what is it that we see? We see some weird demon winged bat-like thing. So is that a ghost of a dead demon? What is it?
Right.
As opposed to like ghosts of people, it's this flying bat demon thing.
Here's the problem, because now with the original film, and I know some people say, it's not fair to compare it to a classic, except that this is a remake of that classic, and so you have to compare.
Well, you invite comparison.
And the film itself constantly compares itself to that original.
Right. Well, and let's talk about cameos for a second here.
Constant throwbacks.
Yeah, the cameos, there was probably a dozen or more cameos if you include locations and non-human entities.
Yeah.
There are more cameos in this film than I think I've ever seen in any major production film. Except for maybe a Muppets type movie where it's like everything's just a cameo.
Where that's the joke.
Yeah. But this movie has basically every surviving cast member except for Rick Moranis from the original Ghostbusters is in this film at some point. Locations are in this film. In fact, the Firehouse makes 2 cameos in this film. You have
The first cameo of the Firehouse kind of worked, but
yeah, not the second one.
We'll get to that.
Just cameo after cameo after cameo. And the problem is every time one of these cameos came up, you're reminded, oh yeah, there was a much better movie in 1984 that I'd rather be watching right now. Oh yeah, that location was in that awesome movie from 1984 that I'd rather... Oh yeah, that ghost was in that movie from 1984 that I'd rather be watching. That's what I kept thinking every time a cameo came up. They were all, with just a couple of exceptions, they were all completely unnecessary and unwarranted and distracting at best.
Well, Bill Murray's cameo
is downright bad. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, Bill Murray was horrible in this film.
Yeah.
He totally detracted from the film. The only one...
His part was originally filmed by somebody else, and then they said, we can get Bill Murray. Let's refilm those scenes with Bill Murray. That's how badly out of place it felt.
It really was. It was horribly done.
And does he die?
Yes.
Apparently, yes.
Okay, because that's what I was thinking, is because he gets thrown out the friggin' window.
Right.
And anyway.
But the thing is that now the Dan Aykroyd cameo, which I was mixed on, because on the one hand, I thought it was cute. On the other hand, it was a total fourth wall break in that he was obviously being Spangler.
Yeah, because he says the line, that's a free floating apparition, whatever.
That's and exactly for a free floating apparition.
Yeah, and you're like, whoa, wait a minute. Is this Ray Stantz?
Yeah.
Is that his character? And also,
that might have worked if they'd actually gotten in the cab and then driven a little bit with him and he had this conversation. But instead, he just brushes him off and he drives away. What was the point?
Earlier at Columbia, you see a bust of Egon Spengler.
Yeah.
So, is this the same universe? And if so, why does nobody remember a giant marshmallow man stomping down Fifth Avenue?
Well, although they made a life-size balloon of it, apparently.
Yeah.
Yep. But the thing is, so the only cameo out of all that I thought made sense was Leslie Jones's uncle. That was a good cameo, right? Have Ernest.
I actually liked Annie Potts' cameo.
I didn't care
mainly because she was playing the same character, so it kind of fit.
That's the problem, is that with both her and Dan Aykroyd, it's like they were just being their characters from the original film, which to me was even more jarring. At least Ernest, when he showed up at the end, you've heard about him throughout the entire film. It's stupid that you didn't put 2 and 2 together that was going to be him.
Yeah.
But B, it kind of if that was the only cameo in the film, I would have loved it. The problem is that it was like the 15th cameo you've seen at that point.
Oh, and you want to talk about pointless? How about Sigourney Weaver?
Oh gosh. You know what I told my wife after we got out is Sigourney Weaver's cameo would have actually been great if instead of Sigourney Weaver, it was the guy that played Peck in the original.
Oh, Mr. Peck.
That would have been awesome.
Well, quite possibly one of cinema's greatest dickhead characters.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as we go through cameo after cameo after cameo through this film and just keep getting reminded of how superior the 1984 film is, it made this film even worse than it already was. And it kept making me long for the 1984 film. I mean, quite frankly, I was like, wow, I can really see why they couldn't do a Ghostbusters 3 because they're all so old. And we're seeing that now in all these shots.
Yeah.
And then, here's, now we're going to get into the big badass battle here at the end of the film. So the
CGI clusterfuck.
Well, here's the thing. So you have this guy unleash a bunch of ghosts on New York City. The Ghostbusters, at this point, their total resume is they managed to catch and then release one ghost. That's been their entire career so far. And yet, they're going to go, the four of them, and take on an army of undead ghosts, using all this equipment that had never even been truly tested yet. Now, here's the thing. I get that this is a comedy. And I get that in a comedy, it's more important for things to be funny than anything else. But, the Ghostbusters, what made the 1984 Ghostbusters so great was that it really wasn't a comedy. It was a comedic horror film. And this film kind of seems like it's trying to do that a little bit at moments, but fails. And it's very inconsistent because, and I would love for either of you to answer this for me. If you can, I'd like to hear your opinion on this because this bugged the crap out of me because you guys know that one of my biggest pet peeves, especially when it comes to elements that are science fiction, is that if you can do anything you want as long as you follow the rules established by your own universe.
Sure.
And we know, not just from the original films, not just from the animated series, but as reestablished in this film from the subway incident, that the only basic effect of proton-based weapons is to hold ghosts in place.
Right.
That you can trap them or whatever. So tell me, how the fuck did they kill ghosts in the climactic battle using proton weaponry?
It's that attempt at logic that just ruins everything. I have no idea. I mean, you had the whole thing where you had that one fist weapon.
Yeah.
That Melissa McCarthy was using, where she was punching ghosts with, and then the two guns that Kate McKinnon had that came out of her her side holster things.
They were just handgun versions of the proton pack.
Right, and it made no sense. And like I said, if you have ghosts, okay, you had like the guy who was killed in the electric chair.
Right. It's actually a cool looking ghost, I gotta say.
Yeah, that was a cool looking ghost. And you had pilgrims and this and that. What are the giant parade balloons? Are they ghosts of a balloon? What?
Well, apparently when you pop a balloon, it becomes a ghost. But then if you pop the ghost balloon, it's dead.
Yeah.
Because notice, and there's a ghost balloon of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man that's trying to kill the Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
And Kristen Wiig kills it not with a proton pack, not with a grenade, but with a freaking pocket knife.
Like army knife she was given earlier.
Yeah. And so, but my point is that you have like the demon one from the concert, and you have these balloons, and you're like, what are they a ghost of? And, because if somebody points out, oh, Mr. Stay Puft in the first one, that's different. That
Mr. Stay Puft was not a ghost.
No, it was a manifestation of an interdimensional demon. That's different.
Manifestation of Gozer.
Yeah, it's not the same thing.
No, it was the destructor of Gozer.
Yes.
Yeah, and so it's not a ghost. But these are ghosts, but ghosts of what?
Right.
I mean,
well, even like in the GIF file that James is playing at nauseum right now. I don't know if you can see it on the live stream there, Andrew, but now of course he switched it. But it was during the Times Square battle. 99.9% of the ghosts you see look like they're human apparitions, right? Like the guy with the electric chair, the pilgrims, all these things. But yeah, the demon thing at the rock concert and the parade balloons don't fit. Even the giant stilty guy, well, maybe he was a circus performer that died and he was wearing stilts. You know, I can buy that. But why the you know, first of all, and granted, this is from the original too. What the hell is Slimer? You know,
I was gonna say that, but I was like, okay, they just threw that in because it was in the first one,
right? And by the way, I don't like the name Slimer. I like his original name, Spud. Which anybody that knows the original film, that's what he was called. He was not called Slimer,
right?
He was
Slimer came from the real Ghostbusters.
Yes, but he was called an angry little Spud. Yes. And I love that.
Eating the hot dogs.
However, the chick Slimer. I mean,
wig. Yeah.
We're trying to be a progressive, feminist, pro-feminist, powered woman movie, and then we take a Slimer and put lipstick and a blonde wig on it, and that's actually a female Slimer.
Yep.
Which implies that that Slimer is a race.
Yeah.
Yes. And can ghosts reproduce?
Apparently. Well, but how do you kill them? How are there dead pilgrim ghosts on
they're dead ghosts, because she says, oh, we killed a whole bunch of them.
And we're having a real quick issue, which will be resolved in just a second, folks. So give it a second. You'll see everything will return. Gotta love when you have momentary issues, but do not worry. We'll be right back up and running right now.
Nice.
It's going so well. All right.
When Andrew's
hopefully
back,
Andrew will realize he needs to dial back into the call.
I should be.
There we go.
Am I not there?
show your face and then get back to it, you lovely gents.
Are we
Sorry about that.
I assume.
Oh, absolutely.
Was that me or
Yeah,
what the hell?
it was absolutely you. Keep talking.
Yeah. Anyway,
Okay.
yeah, so basically to recap, so they killed a bunch of dead entities that can't be killed by using weaponry that was designed to simply hold them in place. Because
Yes.
you can't. What?
Except for that one shredder one, which somehow was operating on the same thing as a trap principle. But why did it turn them into ectoplasm?
Yeah, it made
I don't get it.
There was no consistency in this film as far as trying. I mean, if they wanted to, and the thing is, it was so easy. I mean, and we're not talking about complicated things. Writing 101. All you have to do is have, one of them say at some point, you know what? If we could disrupt their whatever field, blah 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 blah, it would actually kill them. It would destroy them. That way, you can establish at the end that yes, you can kill ghosts. But to not do anything like that and just have them using the same weaponry that prior was only holding them in place and now it kills them for some reason? Huh?
Except if you can then kill them, why are you creating the storage container for them in the end credits?
Yeah. And yet we saw dead ghosts in this film.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dead ghosts.
Yeah.
Let that sink in.
Yeah, somebody explain that to me. How do you kill that? That's like, wow, somebody murdered that corpse.
Well, to me, it's lazy writing for non-discriminating audiences who aren't going to question it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I honestly, I've read reviews from and heard some people who were just like, oh god, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. It's like, first of all, you need to get out. you need to get out more and watch some friggin' comedies, because if you think this is the funniest thing you've ever seen, I weep for you.
Look, it's funny that they're arguing over who gets to say "let's go" first.
Yeah, that's your big gag. It's like, oh, let's go. Oh, no. Oh, you did it. Okay.
I just wanted to tell you that I think this was the best movie ever.
Yeah, but you're a big pile of shit.
Thanks, Jim.
Point taken.
Okay, and I want to talk about the post-credit sequence.
Oh, jeez.
The one that's actually post-credit?
At the very end, yes.
The one I warned you about?
Yes.
That I said we needed to talk about? Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, so here we go.
So don't run out, kids, because there is a post-credit sequence.
Yes, I know there's so much more. So after the credits, you get our heroes sitting around the lab as they're talking and testing equipment and whatever. And Leslie Jones is sitting there and she's listening to a reel-to-reel tape. Why they're still using reel-to-reel in the 21st century, I don't know. But anyway,
it's spooky.
And so she's got headphones on, and she looks puzzled. There's no music going on, by the way, no dramatic music or anything. And then she goes, "Hey guys, what's Zool mean?" And it's just boom, that's it. And they kind of look at each other like, "Huh?" First of all, if you're going to do that scene, the way to do it,
Gozer?
Or Gozer, whatever. But okay, I worked on some films in college, and I worked on some films down in Los Angeles. I'm by no means a master filmmaker. I'm not even remotely a professional filmmaker, but I can tell you that I could have made this scene 100 times better. What you do is you show them doing their things and have Leslie Jones in the background and have her slowly looking more concerned as ominous music starts coming up, and slowly zoom in on her, shutting out the other sound. And then as soon as you get to her, have her take off the headphones and say, listen to this, guys. Take out the headphones and plug in a speaker, and then have the and then go to black. That would be 100 times more effective than that complete waste of time at the end.
But you're also presuming that at this point we actually cared.
No, obviously nobody gives a shit by that point. But I'm talking about this. It's just a perfect example of what's wrong with the way this film is constructed.
I can do you one better. I can tell you exactly the point I started to get really worried about this film. As I said, opening scene, I didn't really mind all that much. But I said in that part, where things started to go wrong with me was when the title of the film showed up. So I'm watching this, and it shows the guy holding onto the stairs. Looks like he's about to fall down into this cellar in this building. And then the classic Ghostbusters music starts up.
Oh, yeah.
Down, down. So you got that little ghost, and then the drums kick in, and I'm getting kind of excited, and then the guitars kick in, and that's what I'm expecting. Like, right on that guitar beat for the credits to show up. Ghostbusters. Instead, it's like 2 or 3 seconds after that.
Yeah,
for me, it's like the problem with the entire film is that I think I saw some hints of humor, some hints of some action, some hints of some horror that might have worked, but the timing of everything was just off.
Yes.
Yeah, timing is everything in comedy. Here's the thing. Everybody who watches this show and knows me knows that I loathe Melissa McCarthy. I will tell you, she's not bad in it. And the reason is because she's toned down. However, she's so toned down that she's almost a non-personality. And the same thing with Kristen Wiig. They're almost interchangeable. The only people of the two of the four that have any character is Leslie Jones and Kate McKinnon. And Kate McKinnon, like I said, it's just because she's a walking cartoon all the time. But McCarthy doesn't. But again, what is a standard staple of a Melissa McCarthy comedy? Michael, you got a guess?
That she's fat.
Yeah, well, she does what Chris Farley used to call fatty fall down.
Right.
And she's Chris Farley without talent, charm, or humor. And so every damn movie she does, she has to have like, and like fall over. And in this, of course, we have a totally unnecessary scene of her in the alleyway with the proton pack slamming up against walls. And they're like, and it goes on forever. They're like, well, eventually she'll run out of power. And it's like,
as a
oh
person,
my God.
I'll say this: I don't hate Melissa McCarthy like you do, and
Me neither.
I mean, I'm not a huge fan, but there's a couple of her movies that I did not care for. Bridesmaids, for those that think that's an awesome movie, I think Bridesmaids was stupid. However, I did really like Heat, and I did really like Spy, both of which, interestingly enough, directed by the same guy as this film. However, those films, and this is something that I think is a problem with Ghostbusters as a whole, the very concept behind it, is that both Heat and Spy, and even Bridesmaids, these are all parody films that are parodies of other films. Bridesmaids is, a parody of basically every romantic wedding film there's ever been. Heat is a parody of the buddy cop film. Spy, of course, of things like the Bourne Identity and stuff like that, and generally done with a gender twist to it, and with a good amount of slapstick. And I think that those films can be very funny and very entertaining. But here, instead of doing a parody of Ghostbusters, it's freaking Ghostbusters.
Yep.
And that's what ruins it. If this was the Ghostbusters or something, and it was like it's, I don't know, just
What the hell is that?
I've got to say it. Brawbusters.
Brawbusters, yeah.
Oh,
if this movie was
Sorry,
a
guys.
parody of Ghostbusters, it could work.
A parody of a parody? I mean...
Well, that's the
Yeah,
problem.
Ghostbusters itself is already a parody of, say, horror movies.
But,
kind of thing.
I mean, like, there are some critics that have said that have given it mixed and middle of the road reviews that have said, hey, this movie would have been better if it was not called Ghostbusters. I actually tend to agree with that. While I don't think this movie would have been great if it wasn't called Ghostbusters, it would. First of all, think about this movie without any of those damn cameos. Without any of the references back to the original Ghostbusters.
Yeah, not one of those cameos is necessary.
It already goes up a couple of points.
Exactly. Imagine now that it wouldn't take that much to tweak because the weaponry at the end of this film was nothing like the proton packs from the original. Because in the original, they just had the proton packs. So what if instead of the proton packs, they started developing this weaponry instead? And
look who's in the chat.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. So we got to ask real quick, Brandon, was this the greatest film of all time? And now we'll wait, but
just tell us how fabulous you think it is.
And so,
yeah, call it Paranormal Fighters or something like that.
Yeah, but yeah, if you did all this, if you changed the format and everything, and then he loved it. If you tweaked the premise a little bit and you amped up the slapstick to 11, you did typical Melissa McCarthy stuff, you did over the top Kristen Wiig stuff, you really pushed that envelope, you could have made a really funny, silly comedy out of it. However, Ghostbusters is not a silly comedy. And for this director to try and take on the idea of doing a semi-serious horror film with comedic actors, which is what the original was, it fails miserably. because this is not a good director for that kind of work. This is not a good film for that kind. I mean, this was a horror film.
I'd go a step further than that. I'd say it's actually, he wasn't setting out to make a horror comedy or comedy horror like the original Ghostbusters. This was a comedy action movie.
Yeah.
Or, sorry, comedy action movie that just wasn't funny.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's lazy writing. The first two, Melissa McCarthy and Kristen Wiig, are so flat and uninspired, and the villain is underwhelming. The cameo's unnecessary. And I think I was talking to you, Andrew, about the fact that it's like it was an hour into it, and I looked at my phone to see what time it was. And I was like, oh my God, it's an hour into it, and nothing really has happened.
Mm-hmm.
No,
I mean, nothing significant had really occurred. It was, and I was like, oh shit, so that means there's like 50 more minutes.
There's been a lot of talk about explaining the technology. Like, why did we have to know how the proton pack works? We didn't get that in the original.
Well, that's the thing, is that they took
so much explaining. We don't care. It's a proton pack. This is what it does. Okay, good. Done.
Yeah, in the original film, they tell you enough to understand what it does, which is really all you need to do with any kind of sci-fi device. In this, they go to the point where it becomes like Star Trek Voyager technobabble, where you actually have Kate McKinnon saying, well, if I could inverse the positron field and make the matrix, I was like, I don't care. Let me see the ghosts. And it was,
but
and by the way, I want to say, because Brandon is sitting there, let me guess, Michael hated it. You realize, Brandon, that the last 3 times you've been on the show, I've been the only person to give any defense to the films you've liked. However, yes, I gave it the lowest rating of the group this time, because this film was god-awful. It was, there was almost nothing. I said Leslie Jones was an interesting character, but nothing else about this film worked for me at all.
Here's a big going back to Kate McKinnon. Here's the problem with her performance. Okay, I am now going to do my impersonation of her performance in the film. Let's do the line, reverse the polarity of the neutron flow, which is actually a Doctor Who thing. But she, instead of saying we could reverse the polarity of the neutron flow, she does it like this. She's like, we could reverse the polarity of the neutron flow. And that's the way she does all her dialogue in the entire film, constantly mugging for the camera shamelessly. Yeah. Honestly, I love her, but she's embarrassing in this film.
Well, and that's the thing. When I hear people talk about, there are several critics that have said that Kate McKinnon and Chris Hemsworth are the best parts of this film. And
they're the worst part.
Yeah, to me, it's like, okay, then anybody that says that probably is way younger than us, to be honest with you. These are people that don't appreciate the original film for what it really was, and I get that, because Ghostbusters at this point is one of those old films that most of the people that we talk to on a regular basis weren't born when Ghostbusters came out, and that does make a difference. Because it really, if you don't appreciate what the source material is, this is not an homage to it. This is not a remake of it. This is not a different take on it. This is an insult to it.
Oh yeah, it's terrible. And remember, if you don't like crappy filmmaking, that means you're jaded.
Yeah.
So, I think that it's safe to say, do either of you intend on changing your score? I know, Tim, you gave it a 2. Andrew, you gave it a 3. I gave it a 1. Anybody?
I'm dropping mine to a 2.5.
Yes,
which for the record
flow through you.
Which for the record puts it at the same level as, for me, as Independence Day Resurgence.
Wow.
Are you sticking with 2 for you, Tim?
The more I think about it, I'm starting to edge towards 1.5, but I'm going to stick with 2.
Okay. I'm gonna, I'm gonna stay with 1 for right now, which puts our average at 1.83. But it really is contender for worst of the year. It is, in my opinion, it's a toss-up between this and Gods of Egypt. This, from a technical standpoint,
you probably didn't see The Bronze or the Brothers Grimsby.
No, I have not. But
Lucky you.
When I compare this to the Gods of Egypt, this film from a technical standpoint was far superior to Gods of Egypt. And, this film had a more cohesive story, but Gods of Egypt had a more interesting story.
Yes.
And,
Okay.
The acting was kind of crap in both of them. So, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be tough when we get to the rest of the year this year. It's going to be tough.
I don't really think the acting was all that bad here. I mean, Kim McKinnon, I get Tim and yours points about McKinnon. Honestly, I said she didn't bother me all that much because at least it was something. I did loathe Hemsworth. I loathed the villain, whom we didn't really talk much about. But then again, what is there to talk to him?
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, we didn't even talk about the villain because he's so
forgettable.
He's only in like 3 scenes.
Yeah, he shows up and then literally his big plan is to kill himself, which he does. And
then that somehow makes him a powerful thing. And he's able to figure this out because of their book for some reason.
Yeah, but then instead of coming back like a ghost that looks like him, he possesses Chris Hemsworth. Yeah. Okay. Whatever.
I should have been working out while I was alive.
Yeah.
That was a knee slapper.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, my wife would say, like, the only thing she enjoyed about it was just, looking at Chris Hemsworth. That was about the best thing for her in this film.
Whereas I saw one reviewer, and I think I know I sent the link to Tim, but I'll send it to you as well. And this is a woman reviewer who did not like this film at all. And she is like, I can't even enjoy looking at Chris Hemsworth because he's too dumb.
Yeah, his comedy was so bad. I do give props to Chris Hemsworth for being willing to kind of
degrade himself that much.
Yeah, and by the way, Dak Crush, get it right. It wasn't a fart joke. It was not a fart joke. We talked about that at the beginning of this show, but no, there was no fart joke. It was a queef joke. But yes, this film was just painfully bad. They tried to push, if it was a raunch comedy kind of thing, if they pushed it into the R-rated territory of other good raunch comedies, maybe they could have pulled it off that way. But
that one I talked about at the beginning.
Yeah,
Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates. Actually, a pretty good movie.
Yeah, but. That's okay. That's the thing is that this film doesn't know what to do with itself, and I'll be more than happy to tell it what to do with itself. So that's going to wrap it up for this wonderful.
I do have to mention the one genuinely funny laugh, and I think Tim will agree with me here because I think he's the one who mentioned it. When they first go to the firehouse, and the other two are talking about how much they love the place, and Kristen Wiig is talking with the realtor and asks how much it is. And the realtor says $21,000 a month. Go to hell! Only joke that really
and that's not even a joke. It's just timing.
Yes.
Her timing on that one was funny. And the only other line that made me laugh in the movie was Andy Garcia as the mayor. He's like, nobody compares me to the mayor from Jaws. I don't know why that made me laugh, but it did.
I thought that was funny too.
But other than that, I mean, it's a complete waste of people's time. And the fact that Paul Feig is talking about a sequel makes me want to deck him.
Speaking of sequels, we're going to be talking about
it's not even good as a kids movie you can take your kids to watch because they're going to be bored out of their mind.
Yeah.
This is not a good film. I mean, I this is definitely a skip it. This one, if you want to watch it, watch the 1984 film. It's better in every conceivable way. Well, let's face, we got a couple of housekeeping things real quick. There will not be an Untitled show on Wednesday this coming week like there usually is. I apologize for that, but have some important family things that we need to get taken care of. However, there will be another special edition Untitled show a week from today on Friday, where we will be talking about Star Trek Beyond with special guest Steve Shives, who will probably try to get to, to see if he actually wants to try and defend Ghostbusters a little bit. We'll see.
Oh no!
Let's see who's out there saying it's going to be.
I miss Steve. I miss picking on Steve.
Yes, but Steve unfortunately couldn't join us tonight, but he did say he wants to join us for the Star Trek review next week. So there will be that, and we are very much looking forward to that. And thank you so much for watching this review of Ghostbusters. Suffice to say, it was shit.
Yeah.